The rain fell in heavy sheets over the quiet Lagos suburb, turning the streets slick and the sky a sullen grey. Beneath the dim glow of a flickering pharmacy sign, a 17-year-old girl stood barefoot, her swollen belly jutting forward beneath a soaked dress. She shivered, arms wrapped around herself, eyes glassy with exhaustion and hunger. Passers-by glanced at her, some with pity, most with indifference, but none stopped. Her voice, soft and hoarse, barely carried over the hum of traffic. "Please, just something to eat." She leaned against the wall, too weak now to stand tall, her braids clinging wetly to her cheeks. Then, from the far side of the road, headlights cut through the mist, and a sleek SUV rolled to a stop in front of the pharmacy. The door opened, and out stepped Mrs. Evelyn Douglas Leigh, 30s, composed, a silk scarf tucked neatly round her neck. She locked the car, but paused mid-step, her gaze landing on the trembling girl in the rain. Evelyn's brows drew together, uncertain. For a moment she did nothing, simply taking in the girl's raw vulnerability. Then something shifted. She stepped closer, umbrella shielding them both. "Come with me," she said, voice calm but gentle. "Just for the night. You'll be safe." The girl didn't answer. She only looked at Evelyn, wide-eyed, the weight of too many days alone carved into her face. Then, slowly, her tears mingled with the rain. Evelyn didn't push. She simply placed a hand on the girl's shoulder and guided her to the car. In the back seat, an 80-year-old boy sat watching Jordan, Evelyn's son, clutching a tablet that now sat forgotten in his lap. He peered at the girl curiously, his small face full of questions he didn't ask. By the time they reached the Douglas home, the storm had eased, but the night remained heavy with quiet tension. Evelyn helped the girl more settle onto the living room couch, draped a towel over her shoulders, and handed her a plate of warm rice. Amara ate little before falling asleep, curled like a question mark beneath a thin blanket. Hours later, the house was dark, the only light a sliver from the hallway. Jordan tiptoed into the room, barefoot, holding his superhero blanket. He paused beside her, watching the gentle rise and fall of her breath. Then, without a word, he draped the blanket over her shoulders and padded away. Evelyn Douglas moved through life with quiet precision, her days stitched together by routine, duty, and the unspoken ache of loss. A nurse by training and calling, she ran a small health clinic in a semi-urban part of Lagos, where the queues were long and the gratitude sparse. It wasn't glamorous work, but it mattered, and it paid enough to keep her and her son, Jordan, afloat. After her husband died in a car crash when Jordan was just 3, Evelyn had folded her grief into a kind of armor. She never remarried, never really dated. Her life became a measured rhythm: morning breakfast, school drop-offs, clinic hours, bedtime stories, and bills. She was overworked and emotionally worn thin, but her kindness remained intact, tucked behind tired eyes, and a voice that rarely rose in anger. Her world was safe, structured, and entirely centered on Jordan, the only piece of her husband she had left. Then Amara arrived like a sudden shift in weather, unplanned, uncertain, and impossible to ignore. The girl had been on the streets for 2 months before Evelyn saw her standing barefoot in the rain, belly swollen, voice trembling. 17, polite but guarded, Amara carried the weary alertness of someone who had been hurt too often to hope. She said little in those first days, answering questions with nods or short phrases. Evelyn didn't push. She simply made space, an extra pillow on the couch, warm meals, clean clothes left on a folded towel. When she finally said, "You can stay until the baby comes. No pressure. Just while you figure things out," Amara had nodded with wide, cautious eyes. Evelyn learned her story slowly, in fragments shared over cups of tea, or during late nights when Amara couldn't sleep. Her mother's silence, her uncle's hands, the boy who vanished the moment she said she was pregnant, her running, the nights on cold pavement, the days going hungry. Evelyn listened, heart aching, but never pried. She offered care without condition, a rare and unsettling gift to a girl who'd known only transactional love. Surprisingly, it was Jordan who cracked the shell first. He started calling her Auntie M with innocent affection, as though she'd always belonged in their world. Amara would read to him in the evenings, her voice soft and sure, and he'd curl up beside her like a kitten, at peace. Evelyn noticed the way Amara watched him, protective, almost maternal, and how she always made sure his juice box was full or his shoelaces tied. In return, Jordan drew her crayon pictures and asked endless questions about her baby. Bit by bit, trust began to bloom. Amara started helping around the house, washing dishes, folding laundry, tidying up without being asked. Then she asked if she could volunteer at the clinic. At first, Evelyn hesitated, but Amara showed up every morning, patient and eager to learn. She was good with people, gentle with the elderly, and surprisingly calm during emergencies. Patients began asking for her still. Not everyone approved. Evelyn's mother, a woman hardened by life and years of quiet warnings, pulled her aside one evening and said, "Be careful, people will take advantage." Evelyn nodded, but answered with calm certainty, "Sometimes people just need a second chance." And in the quiet sanctuary of her modest home, amidst the scent of antiseptic and the sounds of bedtime cartoons, Evelyn watched something remarkable unfold. A wounded girl was slowly turning into something else, not whole, not healed, but braver. And Evelyn herself, so long locked behind duty and routine, began to remember what it meant to open the door to the unknown. The night Amara went into labor, the air was thick with tension and rain. It happened quickly, too quickly. Her cries woke Evelyn, who rushed her to the clinic with Jordan wrapped in a blanket, half asleep in the back seat. The staff hadn't arrived yet, but Evelyn didn't wait. She moved with practiced urgency, guiding Amara through the pain as thunder rumbled outside. Hours passed in a blur of sweat, tears, and clenched hands. When the baby finally came, a tiny, wrinkled girl with a defiant cry, both Evelyn and Amara wept. For different reasons, Mara from the pain and sheer disbelief that something so small and perfect could survive the storm of her life. Evelyn from a place deeper, watching a broken girl become a mother, feeling the weight of her own choices, her own losses. They named the baby Zara, a name Amara had whispered once under her breath, when she thought no one was listening. Zaralight, blossom, dawn. Life, after Zara's birth, shifted again. Amara stayed up through the nights, nursing and soothing, but during the days, she returned to Evelyn's clinic, now part-time, folding clean towels, registering patients, learning, more than most teenagers ever should. She refused to just receive. She wanted to give back, to build something real. Evelyn, seeing her determination, pushed for more. "You need to finish school," she said one evening, balancing Zara in one arm while stirring soup with the other. "Evening classes, I'll help." Amara hesitated, afraid, uncertain. But the next Monday, she enrolled. With Evelyn's help, a schedule emerged: clinic in the mornings, mothering in the afternoons, school in the evenings. Exhausting, but hopeful. Then came the blow. Evelyn's landlord, a sour-faced man with too much time and too many opinions, knocked one morning with complaints disguised as concern. Rumors had reached him, he said. A pregnant street girl living in her home. A baby. What would the neighbors think? He gave her 2 weeks. "It's bad for your reputation," he warned, "and bad for mine." Evelyn stood in silence, fury rising in her chest. Later, over tea, her mother sighed and said, "You could ask her to leave. You've done enough." But Evelyn had already made her choice. She walked into the bank that same week, submitted the paperwork, and began the process of buying the small, weather-worn property she'd rented for nearly a decade. It was a stretch, the loan weighing on her like a second mortgage on her soul, but she didn't flinch. When Amara found out, she broke down. "Why would you do this for me?" she whispered, holding Zara close. Evelyn simply replied, "Because you matter, and so does she." And just like that, the bond between them grew deeper, no longer charity, but chosen family. In a world that had thrown Amara away and left Evelyn quietly grieving for too long, they found in each other something, fragile but real, a second chance. The months that followed Zara's birth were a mix of grace and fire. While inside Evelyn's home, love bloomed in tender, imperfect ways. Outside, the world tightened its grip. Whispers began in the pews of Evelyn's church, spreading like smoke through Sunday sermons and after-service gatherings. The respectable nurse who took in a street girl with a baby. What was she thinking? Church elders pulled her aside with furrowed brows and rehearsed concern. "It's not personal," they said, "but appearance matters." Evelyn kept her responses polite, but inside, frustration burned. Her neighbors grew colder, offering tight smiles and fewer greetings. Some crossed the road rather than pass. Her gate, even the clinic, once busy and buzzing, felt the tremor, fewer patients, less warmth. The hardest blow came from where she least expected. Jordan, sweet and curious Jordan, came home one day with torn homework and bruised pride. "They called me bastard helper," he whispered, eyes brimming. "They said you live with a prostitute." Evelyn knelt beside him, rage and heartbreak crashing into her throat. She hugged him tight, whispering apologies for a cruelty he didn't deserve. Amara saw it all. The distance in people's eyes, the way Evelyn's shoulders grew heavier with each passing day. She began to shrink back, quieter, more apologetic, doing more around the house, holding Zara like a shield. She no longer sat with Jordan during cartoons or teased Evelyn during dishwashing. Something had shifted. One night, after a particularly brutal comment from a neighbor in the market, Amara made a decision. Before dawn, she packed a small bag, wrapped Zara tightly, and left a scribbled note of thanks on the kitchen counter. She didn't want to bring more ruin to the woman who had given her everything, but Evelyn sensed the silence like a mother senses a missing heartbeat. She raced to the local bus park, praying she wasn't too late. There, under the dim glow of a flickering bulb, she found Amara sitting on a bench, Zara asleep in her arms, tears streaking her face. Evelyn didn't scold. She didn't ask why. She just dropped to her knees and said, "You're not a burden, you're family." Amara broke into sobs, and Evelyn wrapped her arms around them both. They returned home together, but something fragile had cracked. Though they smiled and went on with their days, a silence lived between them, wary and unresolved. Then disaster struck. One Monday morning, Evelyn arrived at the clinic to find the front door pried open, the drawers ransacked, and the safe empty. Her savings, everything she had set aside for the loan, for the clinic's future, was gone. The police came, filed a report, shrugged at the lack of evidence. It felt like the ground had collapsed beneath her. Days later, the bank called payment was overdue. That evening, overwhelmed and unraveling, Evelyn snapped. The tension, the judgment, the theft, the fear. She turned on Amara with words edged. In pain, maybe my mother was right. Maybe I was stupid to believe in second chances. The words hung in the room like broken glass. Amara said nothing. Her face crumpled, but she didn't cry aloud. She simply walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and held Zara close as if the baby were the only anchor left. In the hallway, Jordan stood frozen, having heard everything. That night, Evelyn didn't sleep. Guilt chewed at her ribs, but pride kept her silent. Morning came grey and heavy. Amara was gone. She left no note this time, just silence. 10 years had passed like a slow, aching tide. The clinic was smaller, now just 2 rooms and a waiting bench, but Evelyn still opened it. each morning with the same quiet resolve. Her face had deepened with age. The softness around her eyes was now edged by fatigue. Jordan, now 18, lived half in and half out of her world. A sharp mind had carried him to university, but something inside him always seemed restless, unfinished. He rarely called unless he needed money, and at home their conversations were short, civil but distant. Evelyn never spoke of Amara. The memory sat too close to grief. She had searched once, but Amara had vanished like a ghost. No forwarding address, no trace. Then, one rainy Friday night, Evelyn's phone rang just after 11 p.m. The voice on the other end was shaking. "Your son's been brought in. He was stabbed." Her heart clutched. She drove like a storm, arriving breathless at the emergency ward, the air thick with antiseptic and fear. Jordan lay unconscious, pale and bloodless. A doctor explained in clipped, urgent tones, internal bleeding, trauma from a mugging, and he had a rare blood type. "We've checked the registry," the nurse added. "Only one ideal match. She's already on her way." Evelyn sat frozen in the fluorescent-lit corridor, surrounded by beeping machines and the faint cries of other families. Minutes passed, like hours. Then the door opened. In walked Amara. She was taller than Evelyn remembered, her posture straight with calm assurance. Her hair was braided, her scrubs neat, her presence radiating a kind of practiced strength. Evelyn stood slowly, as if she couldn't trust what her eyes were seeing. Words failed her. Amara met her gaze with softness and steel. "I heard from a friend that Jordan was hurt," she said gently. "I registered as a donor 2 years ago, just in case." Evelyn's breath caught. Amara didn't wait for permission. She moved efficiently, signing forms, prepping for the transfusion. Through the glass window, Evelyn watched as blood her life flowed into her son's veins. Later, alone in the hallway, Evelyn leaned against the wall, tears quietly streaming. She didn't know which broke her more, the miracle that Jordan would live, or the return of the girl she had once failed. She closed her eyes, the years folding in on themselves, and whispered, "Thank you." Amara didn't answer. She just rested a steady hand on Evelyn's shoulder, and in that touch, Evelyn felt it, forgiveness, love, and the fierce, quiet power of redemption. After the surgery, Evelyn sat quietly in the corner of the hospital room, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes trained on the floor. Amara sat across from her, calm, composed, a gentle weight to her presence. The silence stretched between them, years folded into it, heavy with what was never said. Finally, Evelyn looked up, her voice hoarse. "I looked for you," she whispered, as if confessing a sin. Amara's eyes softened, and she nodded slowly. "I knew, but I needed time. I needed to become someone I wouldn't be ashamed to bring back into your life." Evelyn's lips trembled, her shoulders slumping as tears rose. "You never needed to earn your place," she said, voice cracking. "You already had it. From the moment you stepped into our home, you were family." Neither woman moved at first, but the air between them shifted, not erasing the past, but folding it gently, like an old letter placed in a drawer. Then a sound broke their stillness. Jordan, stirring in the bed. His eyelids fluttered open, and when his eyes focused on the figures by his bedside, he blinked and offered a weak, lopsided smile. "You came back," he murmured. Amara stood, moved to his side, brushing the hair from his forehead. "You saved me first, Jordan," she said, tears quietly falling. "It was only right that I come back." The days that followed were like sun after a long rain. Evelyn invited Amara and Zara over for dinner, uncertain, hopeful. Zara was now 10, full of energy, with a mother's resilience in her eyes and a laugh that lit the room. Around the small table, laughter returned, awkward at first, then fuller, freer, like it had never left. Stories flowed, memories stumbled out, and old wounds started to scab over with something close to joy. Amara began volunteering at the clinic, slotting in naturally beside Evelyn. They co-managed with ease of Aylan's steady hands and Amara's fire complementing each other. Patients returned. Word spread. The clinic began to thrive again, not just as a place of medicine, but of second chances. At home, Jordan took to calling Amara Big Sis, half teasing, half true. Zara, with childlike certainty, called Evelyn Grandma, and no one corrected her. For the first time in many years, the house was full not just with people, but with something deeper, belonging, love reborn from ashes, and a quiet, shared knowing that even the most broken things could find their way back to light. The clinic courtyard buzzed with laughter and warm music as neighbors, patients, and old friends gathered under the soft glow of hanging lights. A colorful banner stretched across the back wall. 10 years of care, a new beginning. Tables brimmed with food, children danced barefoot on the tiled floor, and a sense of something quietly profound hung in the air. Evelyn stood at the front, a simple microphone in hand, her voice steady but filled with emotion. When I opened this place, I thought I was doing the saving. But I've learned, she paused, eyes drifting toward Amara, that sometimes the people we help end up saving us more. The crowd erupted in applause, and beside her, Amara's eyes shimmered with tears. Zara stood tall and proud beside Jordan in the front row, both of them clapping with wide smiles, radiating the quiet legacy of everything that had been endured and healed. As the noise faded, Amara leaned in, voice low but unwavering. I came to you broken, she said, her gaze full of love and memory. You gave me a reason to hope. I'll never forget. Evelyn reached for her hand, squeezing it gently, eyes shining. And you reminded me why I chose to care in the first place. Their hands stayed linked as laughter rippled through the courtyard and music picked up again. As the celebration continued, people milled about, offering hugs and congratulations, but the two women stayed side by side, sharing a quiet moment amid the noise. Once strangers brought together by circumstance, now family bound by love and resilience. And as the night stretched on and lanterns flickered overhead, they stood smiling, not just at what they had built, but at the future they now knew they could face together.